Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and in today's video we're going to dive back into the Prince Valiant storytelling game of Greg Stafford fame, right here. And more specifically, I want to look at the advanced section for character creation, where we're going to go over the character traits that you can have. Traits are a special system you can add to your Prince Valiant storytelling game characters in order to give flesh out their personalities a little bit more. Some of these traits are even a bit like in the way of flaws. And when you play up your character's traits, at the end of a session, you get extra fame for them. The more noteworthy and potentially detrimental, a trait is, the more fame it's worth to play it up. So you are encouraged to pick traits that you really want to play. These traits are now the focus of how your character is going to advance in the story and what they're going to do. So I highly recommend that you think carefully about what kind of traits you want to have your character, and you probably don't want to give your character too many. All right, so I'm just checking one last thing. Okay. Oh, another note. Traits are normally kept secret from your fellow player characters. Not secret from the storyteller, but secret from the players around, because you want people to realize your character traits through gameplay, through the storytelling. That's kind of the fun part. So, but let's go over what those kind of traits are. Actually, there's one other thing we want to cover, because if you really want your character to focus on one trait and have that trait be like the defining feature of their personality above and beyond all else, you can actually have it become an obsession. And what an obsession does is it takes the fame bonus that you would get for utilizing that trait during a session or playing up that trait during a session, and then you double it. Which means that as long as you play it up to the storyteller's satisfaction, you're going to get double the extra fame for that. But it does mean that you have to treat it like a true obsession. Your character, like for example, if you choose honor, then your character must be obsessed with gaining and keeping honor and maintaining honor. It's like it's always on their lips. It's all they think about. It is the driving force behind their decision-making process. Honor is all. Or if you want to do like the Uhtred, son of Uhtred thing from Last Kingdom, destiny is all. He is obsessed with his destiny. Everything he does is focused around that destiny. And so you could say that as long as he plays up that, as long as your character is playing up their obsession with their perceived destiny, then that's something that you could do as an obsession. Now, honestly, if you had something that was as vague as destiny, I probably wouldn't. You could have it as an obsession, but I maybe wouldn't have it as a high a point value as, say, someone who is obsessed with gold, amassing a treasure hoard, or someone who is as obsessed with, say, Guinevere. You know, if you want to play a Lancelot type person, you're like, I'm obsessed with Guinevere. Like, cool, awesome, play that up, and then you'll get the points for it. All right. Someone who's obsessed with gluttony, they are obsessed with food. They are obsessed with having more food than everyone else at the table. That's an example given in the book. They will hide food in order to make sure that they have more food. They will hoard it. They will go through excellent means, amazing means above and beyond what other people perceive in order to get the finest food and the best food, and they will lord it over other people. They will brag about it. Their food is amazing. This is the finest weed in the South Farthing. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's an obsession. All right. So, but that's enough of that. I would also recommend probably maybe limit your character's traits to only about 100 fame maybe 150 points of fame worth of traits, various kinds of traits, in order to make sure that you're not overloading characters with traits, but also to make sure that, you know, the traits, you want the traits that they have to actually be used. And if a character has a large number of different traits and like, oh, well, I have a trait for every situation, like, yeah, but is that really a character at this point? Or are you just using it as a mechanism in order to gain experience points or fame points in this case? So I recommend keeping the traits to a smaller number and limiting how much fame they can spend on them. Now, if someone wants to have a large number of minor traits, cool, fine. But if you want to be like, I want to have this major trait, like, cool, you get that major trait and maybe one or two others, but that's it. And so now you have an incentive to play up being amorous or being craven, right? You have it, you are incentivized to use those traits as a means of showing that your character is this thing. All right. Okay, so what traits do we have? Let's get onto that list because we've gilded the lily enough. All right. So. Oh, it does mention that you should give a trait a target. So it shouldn't be just a general, like, this character is a Morris. They love love. They love women. They love men. They love love. This character is a Morris for X person. All right. Pick a target because it makes it more interesting. It makes it more focused. And it also probably, I think it makes it easier for the storyteller because the storyteller knows, hey, this other person, this NPC that this character has chosen, that is their focus of their trait, I should probably find more reasons to get this NPC involved in the story. And if it's a fellow PC that they've chosen, well, this could just be a little more interesting, and maybe we can find more ways to put these characters into odd situations to, have fun with. All right, anyway, moving on. This is going to be a bit longer. I know this video's already been a few minutes long, but I'm just going to give you a heads up that we're going to go through this whole list. It's not a huge list, but it's not short either, so pace yourself. And take your time. Maybe listen to this in parts if you need to. You won't offend me. I'm not bothered. As long as people are enjoying the content, I'm going to keep making it. And also because I enjoy doing this and I want to spread the good word about this system. So buckle up. Okay. They're alphabetical, by the way. So, afraid. Afraid is potentially worth about 25 fame points in order to play it up. And it can be any kind of fear that you're talking about. Bats, rats, crows, darkness, spiders, fish, crabs, women, witches, wizards. You could be afraid of solitude, being alone, afraid of soldiers. You have a fear of soldiers. Your character maybe your character was mistreated by soldiers earlier in life, and now they have just a fear of anyone in a tabard and mail. Okay, so that's a cool kind of fear that you can play in, and you can give it a specific target. And be like Indiana Jones, rats. Why does it always have to be rats? Or snakes. Why does it have to be snakes? Fear of snakes. And play that up. And if you wanted to bring it up to, a higher level, it could be a phobia. Because this is just a fear, like afraid of these things. But if you bring it up to a phobia, that's even more. And that might even be worth 50 fame points. So imagine a knight who is deathly afraid of dogs. That would be a difficult life for that knight. They would constantly be around dogs, right? But there would be a lot of opportunities to play up that fear. And how they handle that fear. Okay, ambitious, potentially worth 100 fame points. Someone who's obsessed with their own career, driven to increase their own power and rank by any means. I think we can all imagine how that would play into a knight's style game. That knight is ambitious for They want to not just be a knight, but they want to become a lord. They want to do great feats of arms so that they are given land and title and glory. Maybe even try to marry into a noble family of higher ranking. You can also be an ambitious merchant, a merchant whose ambition is to join the ranks of the nobility. We talked about that in the other video I did yesterday. So that could be an ambitious merchant who's willing to do anything that it takes in order to further their career and turn themselves into a minor noble as opposed to being a common person and that's a cool thing. So there's a lot of ways that ambition can play into your character. Amoris, also worth 100 fame points. This is another big one. Very romantic. They easily fall in love, possibly fascinated by the art and manners of love. Courtly love, art and manners. Ooh, I like the idea of someone who is in love with being in love. I think that's a fantastic thing. It's kind of like this super romantic ideal of the troubadour knight who's constantly singing about his lady fair, and how many people notice that the lady fair is probably a different lady fair every month, but he's always in love. He's in love with being in love in the moment that, the moment that it's not beautiful and light and fluffy anymore, he moves on to the next love and the new love. Ah, often acts foolishly when around attractive members of the opposite sex. That could be, a young man who acts foolishly around young women. That's never happened in history. Or a young woman who acts foolishly around young men. That's never happened in history. It it can be anything you want it to be in that, as long as it falls under the the topic and trait of being amorous. That's a fun thing to play up, and this is something that can actually play into a lot of character stories and arcs, as the DM can, or the storyteller can, pull on this trait in order to get your character to do things that may not be in their best interest necessarily, or it just as a means to get them to go on the quest. Because, oh my goodness, the lady fair or the prince fair needs to get rescued, and boy oh boy, are you're gonna be in for are you're gonna be down for that, because there's this story and ballad about how beautiful and wonderful they are, and the light of the stars is in their eyes, and so therefore I will go and rescue the princess. I will go and rescue the prince. Yeah, you can have fun with that. All right. Arrogant. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha. Also worth 100. Extremely vain and haughty, totally self assured, often irritates others. I bet each of us knows someone who falls under that category, and it might be me. I'm kidding around. Anyway, so arrogance is something that kind of a lot of knights were this, right, in history, and that'd be a very easy trait to fall to play with. Go for it, have fun. All right. Blasphemous. This is an interesting one. This one is actually truly could be truly negative in a Judeo-Christian centered, or any religion centered story. It's worth 50 fame points. And obsessively amused by religion, often disparages those with faith. This is a person who is like, you go to church on Sundays? Why? That's such a waste of a good morning. Or even, it's, that person who basically looks at another person's religion or their own religion and just has nothing good to say about it. They're blasphemous because they don't believe in these things, and they will actively preach against them to other people, and therefore create friction. So that's a kind of a fun trait you can play up. Boastful. Okay, so boastful is worth 50. it's interesting. What I think boastful is interesting because, excuse me, the fame system itself works on spreading the story or having the story spread about your own deeds. But there's a fine line between self advocacy and spreading the story of what you've done and being a boastful braggart. And so this character, if they had the boastful trait, is someone who crosses over that line. Not only do they do these things, but now maybe they make them seem even larger than they actually are. And maybe they make people believe that their fame is higher than it actually is. You might think, oh, that's a way to advance my character really fast. Well, not necessarily, because your character might, well, what might end up happening is people start thinking that your character is mightier than they really are, and then you'll be sent to do things that you're not actually capable of doing, and you can't keep up. Your mouth is writing checks that your body can't cash. I love that phrase. 2 points if you know where that's from. And if you're in my generation, no points, because if you don't know what it's from, where have you been? Okay, anyway, moving on. So, boot licking. Boot licking is someone who's obsequious. Word. I can't pronounce that word. Obsequious or prone to hero worship. So, for example, if your character is like, Lancelot is the best knight ever. I have a Lancelot figurine. I have a Lancelot tabard that I like to wear to sporting events. I want to, like, I have a shard of Lancelot's lance that I caught once that I keep in a locket around my neck. In order to inspire me to great deeds, like you are and like anything Lancelot says, I'm gonna do because Lancelot is the best ever. You are a little bootlicking for Lancelot at that point, right? And maybe your character is obsessed with Arthur, with King Arthur, and so they'll be willing to do like anything King Arthur asks them to do. Now that would be an easy one because depending on your depiction of King Arthur. But if we go with a classic, the Prince Valiant style depiction of King Arthur is not going to abuse that. Other people might. And that's where the character trait can come into play, because your character could be persuaded to do things by the object of their bootlicking that might not be in their best interest or might be the catalyst for adventure. But it's I mean, we use the bootlicking phrase, it is a negative phrase. So this is kind of like not really like the positive of loyalty. This is the negative of not really thinking about it and just doing anything. So like Grima Wormtongue would be a little bit of that for Saruman, if you think about it, okay? Because he's, my lord, and he was willing to say and do anything in order for Saruman to like him, up until that last moment when he finally realizes just how badly he's been treated and he stabs Saruman in the back. Okay, but that's a Lord of the Rings example of someone who's a bit of a bootlicker. Again, this is not loyalty. This is worse. This is like just too much. Anyway, look out for that. It could be a fun trait to play up. It could be a fun trait to add to your NPCs. Okay. Cautious and chivalrous. We'll do two at a time here. So cautious is fun because it's a minor trait. It's only worth like 25 points. It's a minor trait, but it's something that you can play up when you want to have maybe you want a knight who is cautious. They're not craven. They're not a coward, but they're careful. Maybe they're a bit older. Maybe they've been around the block a little bit as far as knighthood goes. And so they're not as impetuous. They're not going to charge off into battle for no reason. They're going to want to stop, take a moment, and examine the scene and create a battle plan that works to preserve as many of their own soldiers as possible. or as many lives of their own men and women as possible. They are cautious. This could be good and it could be bad. It's a bit more on the good side, though. I'd say that because caution is usually advised, especially in dangerous situations. So caution is great. Now, and the other one was chivalrous. Chivalrous is big. That one's actually worth a whopping 150 points. Very concerned with honor, status, and formal codes of action, such as the need to protect women. Often intrudes into inappropriate, usually dangerous situations in order to maintain reputation. So that is a big one in the Prince Valiant setting, because to a certain extent, you're expecting every character, especially every character who's playing a knight, to be a little chivalrous, right? But this is a character that takes it to the next level. This is a character that really pushes the chivalry and is really pushing that attitude of protecting people. Maybe even protecting people in ways and means that they don't actually want to be protected. You like my cat's tail? My cat's tail apparently likes this video. And that's kind of, it's a lot, but it can also make for some really fun storytelling. Oop, there we go. Let's adjust the camera a little bit. It got kicked. It makes for some very fun storytelling. Okay, moving on. Cowardly and cruel. Well, I think those traits are kind of self-explanatory. A cowardly character, this may not be something that you want to have for a player character, but it's certainly something you can use for your NPCs. And someone who is cruel enjoys inflicting both mental and physical pain, loves violence, and perhaps even torture. You could even have someone who loves psychological torture, someone who is cruel, someone who is quite happy to be a mean girl in King Arthur's court. Ooh, interesting. Ooh. You can have a lot of fun with that. There's a lot that can be done with someone who is cruel as a means of pushing the story forward. Deceitful, disloyal, energetic. There we go. For some reason, that word was, the letters were mixing themselves around for some reason. That was interesting. Deceitful, disloyal, and energetic. So disloyal, notoriously self-centered, ungrateful, contemptuous of authority, but not necessarily actively treacherous. There's an important caveat there. They are disloyal. They're not treacherous. They're not a traitor. They're just not your best friend. All right? Or even a good friend. They're a bad friend, but they're not a traitor. So that's an interesting trait that could be used. Deceitful, obviously, someone who's dishonest, lies or causes confusion whenever possible, often hurts others by unnecessary deceptions. Energetic, enthusiastically diligent about work and duties, often volunteers for tiresome duties that others avoid. That sounds like a character who may be like, oh, you need someone to, kill all the rats in the sewers of Camelot? I'll do it. And everyone else is going, what? We have people for that? Why are you're a knight of the round table? Why are you we have people. Why? But your character's like, no, I will do that. That is a job that needs to be done. I, a knight of the round table, will make sure that it is done. I shall take my great sword, rat sticker, and we shall see it done. Mwah! You're diligent. You're energetic, and you will absolutely go through and do this whole thing. Could be fun, right? Obviously, great for adventure. Okay, moving on. Envious. annoyed by the prosperity and happiness of others, often takes petty or treacherous actions against those that they envy. Fanatical about reputation of the British Knights, perhaps, or religion, or of their own family honor, or of duty to one's liege lord. They're fanatical about that. They're fanatical about their own wives' or husband's virtue. They are fanatical about any other thing you can think of. Something that someone could be fanatical about. They could be fanatical about God. They could be fanatical about their cat Spot. Like everything just revolved around their cat Spot. Like, oh my gosh, like you can have fun with this one. As long as you play up it being a fanaticism. So almost like a zealotry for that thing. Cool. A fearful person. This is a bit larger than, because before we talked about someone who's afraid. They're afraid of a thing. Being fearful is more just generally timid, pessimistic, and apprehensive, prone to sudden flights and paranoid fantasies. It's a bit more wider spread, and at the same time debilitating, because it's not just the one thing they're afraid of. Now they're fearful of everything. All right, this is the character that, like, anytime something happens, they're thinking of like the worst possible outcome. Okay. A fence sitter, incredibly slow and cautious, never takes decisions unless forced to, often prevents others from taking any actions. Foppish, takes pleasure in personal appearance and manners, known for a degree of vanity and pride. Yes. Foul-tongued, enjoys obscene or impious jests and oaths, uses them in inappropriate company or situations. Foul-tongued, you foul-tongued wizard, I shall make you pay. Yeah. Meanwhile, the wizard's saying, you, right? Obviously, I would recommend not using that when you're playing a game with kids, but if you and your friends are cool with throwing around foul language all the time, it could be kind of funny to have a knight or a man-at-arms who's notoriously foul-tongued. Generous, gluttonous, gossipy. A blabbermouth often reveals important information to the wrong people. Ooh, did you hear? Would you like the tea? Yes, a gossipy person. Gullible about one subject. They're gullible about foreigners. They believe anything a foreigner tells them about themselves. They're gullible about anything to do with the Grail. If someone, they're obsessed with Grail knowledge and Grail research, so you could sit there and tell them a story that you're making up as you're telling it, and they will believe it like it's whole cloth. Gullible about folklore, gullible about money. Gullible about the excesses of the noble class. So someone's telling you about, the nobles, they do this, and everyone eats from silver forks, and everyone has golden plates, and you're like, oh, you're really? Yeah, I totally believe that. I believe that every noble has a golden plate. Why wouldn't they? Of course they have a golden plate. In fact, not only do I believe that, but I'm going to act on this information, and I'm going to, preach to the world about how nobles are terrible people, and we all need to take them down because they all have golden plates. How dare they? You are gullible. Okay. Gullible, a little higher level, about information from one particular source. So you always believe this one source. And it could be you always believe what's told to you by a man. You always believe what's told to you by a woman. You always believe what is told to you by a monk, because no monk would ever lie. You always believe what is told to you by a king, or by a knight, or by a prince, or by a princess. You always believe what is told to you by a herald. If it's a herald in their heraldry, obviously they're not going to tell you a lie, right? You always believe what peasants tell you. You always believe what a witch tells you. You always believe what a priest tells you. You always believe, anything I see written down in a book must be true. Ha ha. That is someone who's gullible about their sources of information. And you can have some fun with this one. You could have a monk who always believes everything that he read in print. And then how does that monk interact with it when they start reading stories about the Roman Empire before it became Christian, and they're a Christian monk, and that Christian monk starts reading, things that are a bit more heretical, right? But they're gullible towards whatever they read must be true, and so now they have to navigate that route. It could be a way of kind of, excuse me, messing with people and having fun. Okay. And then there's the third one, gullible about everything. It's worth 100 points. A real buffoon, often in prison or under punishment for incredibly foolish behavior. This is the guy who's like the eternal patsy. All right? As long as you spin them a good yarn, they will believe whatever you tell them, and they will act on it to the point where they're going to take the fall for whatever plan you have. That's the big gullible. Now it might be difficult for people to play, but it's cool for non-player characters, NPCs. All right. Hatred. Hate. A person who hates a dog or dogs. Maybe they hate children. All children. Maybe they hate knights from a particular country. Maybe they hate games of chance. Maybe they hate Christians. Maybe they hate druids. You can have there's as many hatreds as there are, or potential hatreds as there are ideas and topics in the human mind. So this is one, it's easy to get, it's easy to play up. Someone who is honest. This is hard because it's a person who is extremely ethical, moral, and trustworthy. Imagine trying to play a truly honest knight. How hard that would be. Ethical, moral, and trustworthy. In a world where so many people aren't and have no problem taking advantage the moment they realize that someone else is going to try to be. Ooh, sounds fun. Sounds difficult. Sounds like drama. Okay. Hot-tempered. Easily angered and very violent and rash when angered. Often makes mistakes in the heat of fury. Independent. A loner, very self-reliant, reluctant to follow any leaders or take up any causes. A loner would also have a hard time interacting with or staying with a party of adventurers. But it's a cool idea to play with, because you could that could be one way of playing up the trait of your character wants to be a loner, is constantly trying to be a loner, but at the same time, because of circumstances, they have to work with these other people. And so how do they interact with that? How does that affect them? How does that affect the story? Play it up, have some fun. Okay. That's independent. So also we have ignorant, someone who's stupid and determined to stay that way. All right. That's an important aspect of it. Ignorance is not just a lack of knowledge, but it's a deliberate choice to stay that way. All right? Because that's something that we sometimes overlook. We talk about, oh, that's so ignorant of you. Well, obviously, because if you just get educated, you won't make that same mistake. And so it's easy for us to think, ignorance is passing. Ignorance is something that is just a thing that will go away with time. And for most people, it probably is. But this is your character's trait, which means that they're probably willfully ignorant, deliberately ignorant about something. So pick a topic, pick what they're ignorant about, and have fun with it. Jealous towards someone could be a child, a sibling, their own mother, a lover, a spouse, a leader. It could be someone else's lover. It could be the lover of your spouse. It could be that you're jealous of the lover of your mother. You could be that you're jealous of the mother of your lover. You could be jealous of a whole range of different things. And play that up in your character. And this is something that obviously wouldn't come up. If you're doing a dungeon crawl, there's very few times that jealousy necessarily would come up in that sense. But if you're having a social-oriented game, a game of courtly intrigue, then jealousy can come in a lot. So that's fun. Someone who is just. That's a difficult one. Worth 150 points. Difficult. Concerned with fairness, legalities, impartiality, and suitable rewards and punishments, often meddles in other people's affairs to ensure just behavior. They're not just about themselves. They want everything to be just, and they're going to try to make it so. Probably a great trait for a judge, but for a meddling squire, ooh, could be fun. All right. Love. Also worth 150 points because it can do a lot. Love of one person of the opposite sex, or whatever you prefer, faithfully and with total commitment, spends much time mooning over the object of their love. But I want you to remember, this is love, not lust, not being amorous, not romantic, not like the romantic poet. This is honest, true, dedicated love. So if you wanted to play a character who loves their spouse, or loves their father, or loves, maybe they have a secret courtly love affair, with where they absolutely declare their love for the wife of their liege lord, because that was a courtly love thing. But their love is not like the weird, thing usually, but is an actual, similar to Lancelot with Guinevere before they actually had the affair. All right. This is true love, or, honest love. I wouldn't say, not true love, quote unquote, but honest love. And that's a very powerful motivator for a character to take actions that would not be in their best interest or to put them in harm's way, which is what our adventures can often be about. Love makes us do crazy things because it demands crazy things for us to keep the ones that we love safe, or to keep them, or to make them happy, or to make them realize their own true potential in life and help them grow. Love is a great motivator, and it should have a place in any game that is even pretending to have social interactions as a part of the gameplay. Do not let it be a shallow, jokey thing. This is something that people should feel comfortable playing up and role-playing to the best of their ability, even if it's imperfect. All right, here's another one. Love. This is only worth 100 points. It's of a group or a category. For example, I love animals. I love my brothers or my children. I love my family. I love the Knights of the Round Table. I love horses. I love, whatever. This is a much more general, like, I absolutely love horses. They're so beautiful and majestic. And so your character knows a lot about horses and they're willing to do a lot for horses. And they probably prefer horses to people. So they love horses. All right. Loyal, worth 150 points. So this is a big one. Loyal to a person, a group, or a concept. Loyal to King Arthur. Loyal to the Christian church. Loyal to the honor of the knights, honor of the knightly class. All right. Loyal to to a particular clan. All right. Loyal to your thane. Loyal to the druidic code. Loyal to the thieves' code. This is just loyalty to a specific thing. And loyalty, like love, can make you do things that you would not normally do. Excuse me. Lustful. Seeks out sexual liaisons whenever possible. Did someone say bard? I'm just kidding. But you can have a lustful knight, a knight who just what? Fair maidens that way? Onward! Or whatever you want to do. You can play it for laughs. You can play it for seriousness. You can play it for them. They're going to get in a lot of trouble. Have fun with it. Melancholic. Ooh, that sounds like Conan the Barbarian to me. Always very depressed, never laughs, often cries or sighs mournfully. This trait is often perceived as romantic. Ah, you get the idea. All right. Lots of sighs, lots of melancholic, like, oh, if only they were here, then life would be better. But they're not, and oh, woe is me. All right, anyway, moving on. Merciful, merciless, miserly, modest, humble, willing to let others take the glory, has a very realistic view of their own capabilities. Murderous, enjoys killing for its own sake, kills whenever possible, especially if the killing is illegal or harmful. See, that's not someone who is, battle hardened or is like, vainglorious. This is someone who is like an assassin, basically. Not just an assassin, but an assassin who loves their job, an assassin who would do their job for free, kind of like a serial killer. All right, this is someone who's murderous. All right, great for a villain. Just saying. Optimistic, pacifistic, won't cause injury to others, even enemies, even under terrible danger. Perverse. That in this case, the perverse actually is talking about someone who is contrary, obstinate, and enjoys discord. All right? So, get your mind out of the gutter. Prejudiced. Well, I think we all have an idea where that's going. For or against things like alchemists, or Celts, or Cornish knights, or the Danes, or knights in general, or Picts. You don't like the Scots, huh? Monks, nobility, merchants, peasants. They're prejudiced against rising early. I'm not a morning person, and I hate all morning people. That could be someone who's prejudiced this morning. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I think that's funny. But that's a way to play that one up. You can have fun with that one. Oh, prejudiced against work. Prejudiced against work. Yeah, you could. There's a lot of anything you can imagine as a topic of conversation is something that someone could be prejudiced against, and you can have that on your character. They can be that completely, he-man woman hater, rah, or no, no female knights ever kind of person, and you can play that trait up and get points for it. Meanwhile, your other, one of the other player characters is like, I'm playing a female knight, and so you constantly have that kind of back, and you have that opportunity for some fun, I hope, banter as the players are enjoying playing off these tropes with each other. Be careful with some of this ones, because this is a place where people can get offended if you're not playing it right. So maybe have a few. This is one trait that I would have some conversations with the table about. If you think that some members of the table might not be quite on board with these topics being talked about. All right, just exercise caution. Could be fun though. All right. Proud, quixotic, reckless, selfish, slothful, Snoopy. No, it's not a dog. Snoopy is someone who is inquisitive, enjoys spying on others. They're a snoop. Squandering, spends money and other resources without regard to value. Thieving, thoughtful. Moving on to the next page. Treacherous. So this is worth 150, and this is someone who enjoys betraying others, often destroys those who trust them. Someone who's deliberately treacherous. This is not someone who commits an act of treachery accidentally, or maybe even commits one act of treachery on purpose because they feel they're serving a nobler cause. This is someone who is deliberately, purposefully, repeatedly treacherous. Yes, Kat. All right. Trusting. Someone who trusts everyone. Truthful. Always tells the truth, even when it is inappropriate. Ruthlessly forces others to accept facts rather than retain their illusions. So if someone is convinced that they are King Arthur, even though it's clear that they're not, but being convinced that they're King Arthur has caused them to be a better person and has improved the lives of so many people around them through their heroic acts, through their good deeds, because they are not just believing themselves to be King Arthur, but they're believing themselves to be an ideal form of King Arthur, maybe even more Arthur than Arthur himself. And your character is so focused on the truth that they would rather destroy that illusion than allow it to continue, because they feel they are doing the right thing by doing so, because this person is not Arthur. Right? And they might even do so even if the actual King Arthur says, no, it's okay. Let him be. Let him, where does that meme? Let him cook. King Arthur's looking, let him cook. It's all right. It's all right. They're like, no, you need to, and they would make sure to dismantle this person's illusions. That's why it's a detriment. That's why it's worth that many points, is because it is enforcing truth. All right. Valorous, exceedingly brave, self-sacrificing, and heroic, always willing to take the risk of injury or other loss whenever bold action is necessary and useful, regardless of the risk to themselves. And lastly, violent, a person who enjoys violence and prefers to solve all problems with violence. if all you've got is a sword, suddenly everything looks like a bad guy to hack. And that is the full list of the traits that are available in that advanced character creation chapter of the Prince Valiant story. I know this has been a long video, but I hope it gave you some ideas of how these can be used. Now, what's cool is you could also use these in other role-playing games, even things like the white box games. By making them, you can use them in that way by saying like, hey, this is worth so many experience points, and so for every game session that you play this up, you will get that many bonus experience points. And that could be a way to help characters level up maybe a little bit faster, at the same time have them, play up character traits in such a way that they actually enjoy stuff more. It's a cool idea to work with. It helps. It helps define characters. And the other part of it is you're not beholden to only this list, especially if you're using it for the Prince Valiant game, or if you're using it for any other game. You can add whatever you like to this list. This is just really, while it is such a long list, I view it as guidelines. This is kind of setting up what things could and should be worth. But now I can take my own ideas of traits and add it in. And now I have kind of a few benchmarks that I can use as examples of how to define my own custom traits. And you can do the same with your own systems, especially if you want. And the other thing is you can use traits to emphasize the kind of game that you want to play by offering up traits that sort of play into the tropes of the story that you as a storyteller want to tell, or you as a player want your character to be telling. So use these not only as a way to help define your character, but also as a way to help push the style of story. Because maybe you've got a game where, 3 players are playing the super serious characters and 1 player is playing a joke character. Well, if you kind of encourage everyone to take more serious-minded traits, then that person who usually plays the joke character might feel encouraged to actually take things a little more seriously because they're getting rewarded for it. Okay? But the other part of this is, in order to make that work, you as a storyteller, and to a certain extent you as a player, have to take it seriously, which means that you have to be willing to look a player in the eye and say, you know what, I know you're making that joke at me right now, but you did not actually play up your character's traits this session, and so I can't give you those bonus points because you had the X, Y, and Z opportunity to play up those traits, but instead you chose to make the optimal choice that went against your character's stated traits because it was a better choice. That's fine. You succeeded in the action, but you're not getting the trait bonus this time. And you have to be willing to actually have that conversation. And players, part of this also is you have to be willing to accept that if you don't play up the traits, you're not going to get the points. And you can't sit there and argue with the storyteller about it because A, that creates bad feelings with everybody. And B, it makes it so the storyteller is going to be less willing. Most storytellers would be less willing to work with you in the future. Every time you argue a point, it's very likely that storyteller is going to be less willing to bend in your favor on a different point in the future. Because a lot of people tend to get stubborn about this sort of thing. So I understand that some people can feel very personal about this, and they're like, I chose these traits and I absolutely played them up. I don't know what you're talking about, even though you know that you didn't, but you're saying you did anyway because you don't want to miss out on the points. But you're going to end up creating an environment with your storyteller to the point where you're actually going to miss out on even more, not just the points, but on the goodness of a fruitful storytelling experience. And you don't want that. We want to have positive experiences at the game table for everyone. So storytellers, I encourage you to use these trait systems, but I also encourage you to be firm and straightforward and consistent about it. Consistent about saying, you know what, if I'm going to expect you, you've chosen this as an obsession, so therefore you must, if you want the points, you have to act on it. If you don't act on it, cool, you're not getting punished, but you're not getting rewarded either. That's the other part of it is, not acting on the traits is not necessarily going to get you a punishment. There's no detriments, there's no demerits, but you're not going to get the reward. And players, be willing to accept that if you make the optimal choice that goes against your traits, that you're not going to get the reward for it. All right? And be prepared for that. That's not a bad thing. That's how the game works. Anyway, thank you so much for your time and your attention. I hope that some of this information was interesting and maybe even helpful, and maybe even made you want to play the game even more. Oh, I'm getting a little bite action, huh? All right. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace be with you. Bye-bye.